This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Welman.
It's a Lekker Rugby Pod, episode 14. We sailed past episode 13. Nothing bad happened to anybody. Only good things. The Boks whooped the Wallabies in Brisbane, and we're looking forward to more of the same. And yeah, as usual, it's Harry to talk to me about it. How's it, Harry?
How's it, MV? Are you doing all right?
Not too bad. Not too bad. The weekend's coming closer, so it's always a good thing. Then I can't wait for this weekend. And you and I were talking during the week, planning for this and everything else. And you were talking about, the relative importance of the different competitions and how important Rassie reckons the World Cup is, for example, compared to the Rugby Championship. And you had quite an interesting theory about that. Tell me about that a bit.
Yeah, not to give anyone trauma in South Africa, but it's almost like currency exchange. One competition can weaken depending on the prestige of it or the quality of the competition. And we've seen that with the Premiership in England, and we've seen the ERC go up. So it's similar in Test rugby. You have these tournaments that are just, they're just figments. The Rugby Championship is, I call it the reluctant championship because it's never really taken hold in the consciousness. I'll give you the thought experiment, NBA. If the Boks were to sweep the All Blacks and just pound them, give them a hiding 2 times, but then drop one to Australia and Argentina, I don't care. We just remember the All Blacks. So it's just a convenient excuse to play the All Blacks within an acceptable money-making tournament under Sensar auspices, but we don't care about it. So Rassie doesn't either because he knows that his legacy is built around World Cups. It's built around the internal rivalries that exist for any Bok coach, which is you inherit the All Black rivalry. Now we've gained the Irish rivalry. We've always going to have the English rivalry. And there's, I guess you can look at it that way as to why the Wallaby rivalry, which is on paper fantastic, doesn't ever catch fire because all 3 of the 4 teams at Rugby Championship are obsessed with one of the teams, which is the All Blacks. Argentina can make their whole season by beating the All Blacks. Did it. Tick the box. The Wallabies are obsessed even more than we are with All Blacks. It's right on their doorstep. It's their next neighbor. It's their brother that always beats them in the fight. So they're obsessed with that. But it slows everything. And then we're obsessed. So basically the All Blacks can be obsessed with themselves. No, they are definitely always up for the Bok games and they want to keep the blood slow. So I think what we have here is Rassie's just being rational. Rassie is rational. Rassie is rational unless he's irrational. And he's irrational only when he's got some brandy or he's just, lost his way in the texting machine. But in general, he's a rational guy. He's a methodical guy. The war inside Rassie is between those 2 Rassies. Like the little devil on the shoulder and the angel on the shoulder. And his best self is extremely methodical. He's built 1,000-cap first team, 1,000-cap second team. Now he's set upon the third. So it's okay if he drops a game or 2 and doesn't win the Rugby Championship if it's a big if it means that he gets to the final and possibly wins, but hopefully wins in 2027. Because if he does that, you and I both know that with the benefit of time and history, a 3 World Cup back-to-back-to-back winning team with one figure at the top of it becomes legend, exceeds Dr. Donnie Craven. Rassie would be the mastermind of South African rugby. And all credit to him, that's worthy. And so to do that, he reckons that he has to do experimentation inside the games that he can afford to experiment with. So that would be Scotland end of year tour, that would be Wales this year. That's about it. You cannot put Vessels and Grobbelaar in Tucumán, Argentina, where literally it's like you're, going, to war with banditos with a biker gang. It's a really hostile place to go. Perth Fontaine is the place to put these 2 guys with the biltong shop right across the road from the stadium. It'll be more green than gold. So I get what he's doing. He's still got the bench, the mother of all benches, to wait to save the game. But he would never start this team in a knockout game. He would never put this starting pack with 21 caps in the front row, 30 in the second row, 135 in the starting cap. He would never put that pack up against the All Blacks at Ellis Park or in Cape Town. So he's established the pecking order and the currency exchange as World Cup is like, the healthy currency. Below that is these individual rivalries that matter. Got to beat England, got to beat the All Blacks. got to keep your record, positive against everyone else. Try to rectify the Irish. Then you come down to basically the Rugby Championship being the only venue until it can be bettered. And so I think the plans around All Black Tours returning, possibly Seven Nations membership, all those are in the landscape. But this particular game in Perth is not a make or break. What it is an opportunity for him to look how good Jan Hendrik is really. Can Ruan call a line out at test level? And, can Ellich Low back up a performance? It's one thing to do something well at test level. Can you back it up?
Yeah. So what Rassie is effectively saying is it's not disrespecting the Australians, it's disrespecting the Rugby Championship. That's what it comes down to, if you really want to call it that.
He's doing his job, right? So his job is to get us to the third World Cup, have Chasing the Sun 3, and then dissolve into, tears of joy and ride off into the sunset into on his bucky, into legend and lore, and then probably unretire and come back. But anyway, it is definitely, there's no way to argue it. If Ibn Etzebeth, Andre Pollard, Frans Malherbe, Peter Steph Dutoy, possibly Sia Khaleesi, and these guys can go semi-final 2011, lose by 2 points to Dan Carter's All Blacks, win in 19, win in 23, win in 27. The GOAT team debate's over. Individual GOATs don't matter to South Africans as much because that's not how we win. We win more like a pack and more like a, pack of wild dogs almost. So we don't have one guy that sticks out. But you could say that generation exceeded Matfield and Botha at that point.
Yeah, no. So isn't the problem then that the Rugby Championship it's never really, attained any sort of almost mythical status? Tri Nations was much better. I mean, then the Australians were still a proper team, and that there was a live, very healthy rivalry going on. But this Rugby Championship is just number one's got a terrible name. Number two, it's marketed badly, very badly for that matter. Brett McKay, your co-host on 8-9, wrote an article about that. Compared to the Six Nations, I mean, Six Nations is like, some people almost consider it more important than the World Cup, if you look at the European sides. Here we're just going through the motions. Should we just maybe amp up the marketing a bit to get this rivalry going, number one, by changing the name to something more palatable?
I actually think we just go back to tours. It's the geography that matters here. I mean, marketing, yes. We market it better than they do. Sanzar is like a little tiny office somewhere in northern Sydney. There's two guys in there, and they're just, picking the nose. So there's nothing there. And guys like Jared Wright or our friend Ringo or any number of really interesting social media guys in Australia do a better job of pumping it up. But they don't know how to do it. So that's a pipe dream, and it requires money, it requires interest. I think it's about the travel. And so I think there are individual rivalries between these four teams that are really special and interesting. We just haven't found the right vehicle within which to place it. I would literally go back to every other year, a 3-game series between the All Blacks and the Springboks. So you have a year to sort of pent up rivalry, revenge, and then you do it, but you settle it. You have a deciding test. And then the off year, you're going to go to Australia. And then you work the Pumas in some way, right? I do think that's what the people actually want. I don't think that they want this, because by now they would have said they wanted it. You can almost predict exactly what the crowd and level will be and the interest level will be. That being said, I'm one of those guys that the box play doesn't matter if it's 2 a.m. or if it's in Japan or if they played in Siberia. I want to be there. I want to watch it. I want to analyze it. So you already got me. The question is about casual fans. It's about a 14-year-old kid who's choosing between the sport he just watched at the Olympics, maybe want to be in the NBA, want to watch the NBA. It's a global market. Esports is a market. So I think we have to think differently, and it hasn't caught fire. That being said, I just had a really long, nice chat with Matt Pierce of SuperSport, and he's in Perth right now. And what he says is, what's interesting is on the ground, the expats that either live in Perth or have made it over, to Durban East or Perth Fontaine for the weekend, are having a jolly time. It's a carnival, it's a festival. It doesn't have that gritty fear factor. I don't know about you, but I woke up on the Irish test morning and I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. Is it going to be a good day or a bad day? I want to just smash my head against the wall if we lose. And if we win, I want to run naked around the city and, and just piss on everything. So none of that's happening in Perth. What it is like a family celebration. It's probably a reunion of sorts. It's a way to show your pride and walk around Perth and say, this is where I'm from. These are my guys. These are my heroes. They're mythical creatures. Look at Eben, striding like a colossus through the streets. It's like a way to say, okay, I'm Australian now, but I'm still Safa and my roots lie there. You can tell your kid, hey, this is where you came from. These are my guys. So I'm not going to shortchange these experiences. The tears of Argentina were real. The joy, the fact that they probably spent a significant amount of time in Wellington this week on the piss and having a great time. I mean, these are real things. It's just that the tournament structure and the fact that people are flying 44 hours from Argentina to get to Wellington, you can never match the Six Nations where you go London, Cardiff, Edinburgh, Dublin, and then your farthest thing is to go to Rome. And these are just little 2-hour flights. And it's one-off, you play one game against those guys, so it's different. Because you have 4 teams, you're going to have to do a different format. So I would kind of rebrand it. I never even liked the Rugby Championship as a title, by the way. It's pretentious.
No, terrible.
What do you mean the Rugby Championship? What does that even mean? Like Tri-Nations was much better. So that's where we are, man. I don't know how to fix it. Probably this is happening. What I'm just saying, what I've heard is happening, that the seeds of the demise of the Rugby Championship lie in these revival of the tours, which the All Blacks and Springboks are agreeing on, and kind of stuff the rest. So Argentina's future might lie in the Americas, inside that, Super Americas League. And Australia, bless their soul, is fighting for survival in a very tough landscape.
So those tours are slated to start in 2026, if I'm not mistaken, is it? And that year, the Tri-Nations or the championship, will sort of take
truncated.
Step back. This 2026 is going to start.
Yeah, so you can tell the immediate effect is it dings the Rugby Championship. It makes the Rugby Championship just a rugby ship. It's no champion. The champion has always been unofficially been whoever is on top between the Springboks and the All Blacks. I mean, to just be honest, this is how rugby works. It's not a fully worldwide sport with the kind of health that you would see in other sports where there's, 50 teams and 20 of them can win and 5 of them usually do. This is a sport where if you look at the World Cups, it's New Zealand, South Africa, and possibly South Africa or New Zealand. So there's something about that just means that when we play coming up in Ellis Park and Cape Town, it eclipses everything else. That's all I'm thinking about, by the way. I mean, Perth is interesting, and I'm going to drill down it like, our viewers and listeners have expected from me. I'm going to go to the nth degree. But I'm still I'm just kind of looking at the next few weeks and going, how are the All Blacks traveling right now? Could we just smash them twice? Would that be fun? Yes, it would.
This is a nice start, but let's get to the main meal now.
Yeah.
So the other option, sorry, just to hop on it a little bit, is the Rugby Nations Championship, whatever, the World Championship. That's also sort of in the works, isn't it?
Yes, and so the impetus for this is to normalize the rugby season, to finally have a global season that allows us on any given year to sort of do like what the Harry Index tried to do. Like, where are we really? There's critics. The critics say that it's drawing the ladder up so that tier 2 nations can never actually get up. It's almost like saying, now we're here. If you're in this forever. You're safe. If Fiji's in, they're in. And whoever is out, Samoa, sorry, never. The other thing is that it's a money grab. I mean, it is a way to monetize tests that are not inside the Six Nations, are not a World Cup, and those have traditionally lagged on generation of money. So I get that part. I mean, you have to be real, guys. We cannot say we want what we want, but then we don't have any money to do it. You need the money, and it will disproportionately benefit South Africa, by the way, because in the world of rugby, in some ways, we givers, not takers, but in this one, we'd be a taker. It would be run on, the euro and the pound, and we'd be getting sort of our share, but it would help us more. So it's not a bad thing. But it does have an effect. And the effect is that it We don't know what the effects are, the hidden hand and all that stuff, unintended effects. But one effect that's clear is that it will wipe away the importance of July tests and end of year tours. So we're going to get much more housed in vehicles, tournaments, structure. It's going to be less, kind of that easy peasy kind of cool way that rugby has of, hey, let's play Fiji in San Diego. Like that stuff's going to go away.
Right. Last question before I move on. The chances of a 7 nations, South Africa joining the 6 nations. I know there's a lot of purists who are going to, spit out their coffee at the moment, but the point is, it just makes more sense geographically. You talked about Argentina playing in the Super Americas, and Australia maybe trying something with Japan. Isn't that a better solution, a more obvious solution? I know the URC seems to work very, very well, and except for the Welsh that are a bit upset about everything as usual. But the point is, it just makes sense to me. Only problem probably is the fact that now the Welsh and the French and everybody has to travel down to South Africa once in a while to come play test here. That can't necessarily be a bad thing. Is there any chance there, you think? It seems to me like it's off the table.
Actually, I think it's inevitable. But it's a question of when. It could take a long time, but it will happen. The reason why it will happen is we cannot afford our game. We cannot afford ourselves. We're living above our means. The signs are all there. And so once like in the family, you're the brother-in-law that never really has the right thing going on, and they always borrowing money, and they have a fly-by-night scheme and a get-rich-quick scheme. And hey, MV, I've got no miss. There's a restaurant in Santon that's going to really kill, and then it dies. That's who we are. That's rugby. We are like literally drunk sailors on shore leave, just always out of money. And so who we invite in, and we invite the mafia. And the mafia is called venture capital. Venture capital isn't in and of itself evil, but I mean, it has a amoral impulse, which is it has the highest and best use, return on investment. It doesn't really care about traditions and pageantry and flags and all that. It's just, does it sell on TV? Can I put it somewhere? And does it make me 400 million back? And because of that, 7 nations inevitable, same time zone. It is the best team in the world, already in bed in the ERC, now in the European Champions Leagues. The money on offer with a growing country, with more and more of South Africa watching rugby, and the rising middle class in some racial groups that didn't have money before are going to get enraptured by the idea of the fame, and it's the marquee sport of South Africa. So once you have that, and you have little tiny Wales with 3 million people and smoking factories dying, and you have Scotland with just, lovely country, but it's not going to make a lot of babies anytime soon. And Ireland wanting to test itself against the best, knowing that if you keep playing the Springboks over and over and Ireland plays Springboks, both teams get better. And then the French will be the opposition because they're French. But even France is thinking, do we really want to just have this nothing game against Italy every year, where we've had our stats, everyone gets to score 5 tries, Italy will be good for a couple of years, but then it won't be good. Or could we have the Springboks? And also, for the Northern Hemisphere brain, wouldn't it be cool to say we took the Springboks away from our enemies down there in New Zealand, with the economies that can swamp? If you add the French, English, and South African economies to a competition, and the types of chasing the sun type documentaries that could come from it, it kills it. So it's inevitable once we cannot generate money for ourselves with our stubborn, stuck in the mud attitudes, and old guys in blazers running clubs, and their sons doing marketing and their daughter doing ticket stuff. Once you get fully professionalized, you just start saying, would it be cool to have Ireland, South Africa, England, and France in an annual tournament? Oh, there is a tournament. It's called 6 Nations. Let's make it 7. It used to be 5. Can we make it 7? Yeah, why not?
Yeah, would you rather have South Africa or Spain or Portugal in a 6 or 8 nations? I mean, it's a no-brainer. Yeah. I agree with you. There's no way. And I feel sorry for them. I mean, Portugal's a fantastic, lovely people, rugby team, but there's no way you're going to take the Portuguese above the Springboks. Is the way it is. All right, thanks for that. That's quite an eye-opener. I thought the CVC capital thing, sort of prohibited that a bit, the 7 nations, the fact that we don't want to get in bed with them. You've got another suitor that that's after our money, offering us ridiculous amounts of money. Can't remember the name now. Anyway, the point is, that's going to be interesting. I want to see that.
Yeah, it's a Seattle group, but Saru did something pretty smart. Maybe the first time we can say this, right?
Yeah.
By selling off only the commercial arm and holding on to the brand. So we separated the brand in two different parts, and it's what New Zealand should have done. And so Springboks beat the All Blacks at the World Cup, and they beat them in the marketplace.
In the boardroom.
Yeah.
That feels almost as good, doesn't it? I like winning. It's a good thing. Okay, let's talk about this weekend's game now. Firstly, Rassie went ahead and announced 10 changes to the team, and there was a lot of huffing and puffing about that. And then Joe Schmidt went and announced 10 changes to his team, or squad for that matter. 5 in the starting lineup and 5 on the bench. But before we get to that, I've been talking about the fact that everybody seems to want to speed up the game. Everybody's built around speed. Jan-Hendrik Wessels is in the team as a prop in this instance because he's so fast and he's so good in the loose and everything else. But you've had some inside information about that's not necessarily what's going to happen. It might happen, but it's not the only thing that's going to happen. Tell us about what you're hearing from the Springbok camp.
Yeah, so everyone who's watched Chasing the Sun 2 has watched the Scrum episode. And the premise of the Scrum episode is not only to exalt our first set piece, the best set piece, the defining set piece of our sport. It's also to take us on the inside of what you would have to be and do to become the best Scrum team in the world. And it has to do with depth. Our heavy men get injured. They pull a thing in their shoulder or muscle. There's no way to scrum. You cannot scrum very much injured, whereas you could play. There are positions in the field where you can play and carry an injury. But in a scrum, you're going to get found out if you got an Achilles or if you have a toe injury or if something is wrong with your elbow. So you end up having to have 2 props, 3 props, 4 props deep. What the Springboks have over everyone else, though, is when they have those 4 props on each side, so 8 props-ish in the wider camp, and then when they drill down and it's 34 players and they have sort of three lines, if they throw in a guy like Dwayne Vermeulen to scrum, which apparently he's been doing all week and with his ears bleeding, which means that he's really into it, it means that you have Wessels scrumming against Malherbe. It means you have Tank de Toy scrumming against Ox. And then when he gets tired, then they throw in Koch, and then they throw in Nyakani. They can throw in all kinds of guys because they're swing props. So where would you get a better scrum practice if you're Jan Hendrik than going against Malherbe, and then France gets tired, so they throw in Vince? I mean, it doesn't get any better. You could have the most, the million euro scrum machine that the French have apparently, where you have all kinds of balancing techniques, and it sits inside the Michelin factory, and it's been tested and patented. But just give me France and then Mr. Incredible, just see if I can do it. So that's what Jan Hendrik has been going through. You and I both know that the unsung hero of this entire story of, I don't know, what has it been, 3 or 4 years, has been Don Human, the harbor master, the pilot that gets your big giant, tanker from the open sea into the harbor and no one gets hurt. And he has a unique way of doing it. I don't think it's just technical between you and me. I think it's got some chias in it. It's got some mystical powers. I think these guys believe in him. I think he loves them. I think he cares about them. I think he's not one of those guys shouting at you all the time. I think it's a mix, but they really seem to get it. So when you look at it, you have scrumming hookers, and you have hooker props, and you have lock hooker props, and you have all this versatility. But Don will not let anyone get out there in the front row who cannot scrum. So that's the issue. It's actually strange if you win a game on set piece in Brisbane, and then you have a chance to go win, back to back, or the third in a row in Australia, and then you take out one of your hidden weapons, which is scrum. But I don't think Don Human has put Wessels and Grobbelaar in there to embarrass him. I do think the hook is early if it goes wrong, because you have Marks, you have Ox, and you have Koch on the bench. So there's always that. So it might be a 40-40 game where you have, just half up. But I think he really wants to see it. There's a proper opposition now. Angus Bell is a really good scrum prop. He's a really good loose head. And Ala Toa is not great, but he's test quality. He's got 71 caps, so he knows his way around the scrum. I think Rassie and Don would be saying, "Whoa, what a beautiful opportunity to see if Jan Hendrik could be our third prop, or even our second prop, if depending on the ages of people that go down."
The thing with Jan Hendrik is his fact that he's so good in the loose now. That's actually why he's there. Sort of a second Malcolm Marx to a degree. What he can do, he doesn't play with Marx, but he does the same job as Marx would do. I read somewhere that he's faster to the breakdowns than some of the loose forwards, or most of the loose forwards in most instances.
He really is quick. Tank is also, Dutoy is actually a guy that's a little bit underrated and deceptively quick. He had a barnstorming season in the Premier. If our viewers and listeners didn't watch a lot of it, he was in most teams of the year. He was a try-scoring machine for Bath. He's on the move. He's a very difficult guy to put down. So I think, when you look at Krobs, Tank, and Wessels, that makes up for probably the light carrying second row in this particular game. Salman is not really a carrier of note. He's being groomed to be a leader and a captain and a symbol of hope and outreach to communities. Nortje is a ruck entering man. He's a busy guy. So he may not have the legs to carry as well. If you hit 25, 30, 40 rucks, you're not going to be carrying 10 times. So I think he just puts on his ruck cap on and he just goes. And then I think you want to get some carries out of Tutoy. I think you want to get Wessels on the move. Both of them have good hands. Grobbelaar is also good with ball in hand. And that supplements a guy that we haven't talked a whole lot about, but I'm really keen on him, is Marco van Staden. If you go back in time to Eddie's disastrous opener at Loftus, and if you were sitting in your backyard listening to the oohs and ahs from Loftus, they were only one golf shot away from your house. A lot of those oohs and ahs were for Eskom. He had a man of the match performance. I don't even remember if he was man of the match, but he was the man of the match. So interestingly that he's back against the same Aussies and some of the same people. So I'm looking for him to be a big carrier along with Pieter-Steph du Toit. Our friend Ringo always talks about he likes a big, slow 8. Erlich Low, he's not slow, but I know what he means. He's not as quick as Kwacha. I like the way he loads up. So, you always have to look at your starting pack and say, where are my heavy carriers? And I think Rassie has 5. I think he possibly has 6. 6 heavy carriers that he can rely on. That's really cool, because if you can do that and you can move the gain line and you get 4, 5, 6 meters per carry, and it'll be raining in Perth, I think a lot of your problems are solved for young Sasha, young Morne. They don't have to think as much, because when you're getting all that gain line, everything looks bigger and better.
You mentioned to me that maybe Marco is the new Flo Low. It's that seems to be a kind of a role that they're grooming him for.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You can look across at the other game just real briefly to think about that. If you have Pablo Matera, who can play any position, Juan Martins Gonzalez, you could argue that that's what the All Blacks are missing. So Springboks have loose forwards aplenty, but what they need is someone that can play all 3 positions. That's not Kwacha. In a way, he plays like a forward back. It's possibly Pieter-Steph, but he's overworked. So who is that other guy? And, it could be Ruiz. He has, we should never give up on a guy like that, has that much physical ability. But Marco is kind of that, he doesn't take a backward step. So you can stick him in as a fire plug at blindside. He gets over the ball fine because he's got the body shape for it. He's not a tall guy. And then he has that Jasper Visa power from a standing start for 8. So I like him on the bench. He's starting this weekend, but I think it's nice to have a guy like him in the camp. That kind of tool that fits everything, more so than Kwacha. Kwacha is a different kind of tool. It's a very specialized tool. And Kwacha doesn't necessarily work in a heavy game in the rain against a big team. And make no mistake about it, Australia's got a big team. Harry Wilson and Rob Valentini are big carriers. It's hard to stop them. They're not the easiest people to put down. Angus Bell is probably one of their best carriers. He is a load. And then you have Korobetti coming back. some people to tackle this week.
Harry, you mentioned that, Marco is sort of a Mr. Fix-It in the mold of a Francois Low and the likes. And that means he can slot into any position. Do you see him, do you actually see him as a 7 or an 8, maybe? Does it work?
He's more of a 6, actually, on the height issue. What appeals about Marco for the this is conjecture, by the way, it's not inside information. He's got 21 caps, which usually means the second year blues or the sophomore jinx is gone. He's 28, so fully mature body, has already had injuries, come back from injury, has shown the heart of a warrior. He doesn't mind traffic, he doesn't mind contact, he likes it a lot. So I think you can put a guy like that at 8. You can. It's harder to find a 6'8" than a 7'8" using Safa terminology. It's easier to do a crossover. You can easily imagine Low, Peter Steph, a lot of guys. You can imagine anyone who's playing 8 playing 6, and you can imagine most 6s playing 8. Sevens, right? The open sider jackal fetcher position is the hard one. That's why I use Flo as an example, because he was a big body. He could easily play all, and did play very good 8. He could carry really well. It's hard to find those guys. It's actually hard to find a Richie McCaw that can play all 3 positions. His best position was at open sider, but Marco is that kind of person. But I think it's also about bulls. So you have 7 people in the starting pack that are in their 20s, and some of them are quite young. Several of them have less than 5 caps. Half the pack has 5 caps. So then if you add the fact that they're bulls, Low, Marco, Norke, and the props, you have the cohesion you'd like. So at least if it's hard and you're going out there and you're a young guy, at least you can look to your left and your right and you recognize somebody. That's nice. And then you have the bench waiting. So I think Marco is also a play around those, but the 21 is really important. You don't have that many tests between now and World Cup. It's really difficult to bed that in and get that kind of cohesion and IP. So I think he's already crossed the mark. I think what they want to see is just more good stuff. And now he gets to run on there at 28 years old and 21 caps in this pack, and it's just Peter, Steph, and him that are the seasoned warriors. So in a way, he kind of got promoted a little bit.
Yeah, it's only his 6th time that he's starting now of those 21
exactly.
caps. Yeah, so he's actually quite fresh still. I asked that question specifically because while we were chatting, the Bulls team announcement came through for this game against the Pumas, which is now completely a different level. But the thing that I noticed is they moved Carr from 6 to 8, which is exactly what you were saying. He can switch between those 2 positions, but not the other way around. That's why I was asking the question. And on the subject of the Bulls, and you said the 5 Bulls, Wessels and Grobelaar and Norke and Van Staden and Low. There's another bull floating around here. I wanted to know whether he has any chance, because I'm starting to wonder if he's big enough, physical enough, slow enough for Ringo's liking. And that's Cameron Hanekom. He seems he's on the way back. He seems to be basically ready to go. But I'm starting to wonder if there's a place for him or his type of player in this Springbok squad, even no matter which one of the 3 teams he plays in. Do you think so? What do you think? What's your opinion?
I'm very high on Cam. I think Hanekom has got the full bill of goods. I would say that one thing, if I was his strength and conditioning coach, or if I was his movement coach, I would work on becoming more injury proof. That's actually an interesting topic for another day. But there are things you can do. It's spectrum, right? And anyone can get their leg broken. There's no one alive that can resist certain forces and shear forces and stuff. But I'm saying I think there's a way to make him a little bit more fit for purpose in rugby.
Robust.
And it's probably gonna mean that he has to add a few kgs. It's not the worst work in the world to eat more steak, but I think he has to. I think that's probably part of it. But there's things he has that are instinctual, and there's a certain like malice that he has. Like at first you think he's going to be one of those guys, gifted athlete, show pony, really quick, good hands, good skill. But I think he likes the dirty stuff too. So for me, he's a perfect Bok. I just think he's going to have to stay healthy for a long enough period of time because coaches do have to worry about the 2 or 3 guys in the forwards that have to play 80. And if you have people that are always not going to be able to play 80, that's a problem. It's okay if it's the props, it's okay if front row, has to come out, but it's really tough if you're going into a game and you're not sure that your number 8 can really go the distance.
I agree with you on the fact that he's going to bulk up a little bit. Like I said to you the other day, I saw him at Loftus. He was sitting in the crowd, signing autographs, and with a couple of the other Bulls players are on the mend. And what caught my attention is he's smaller than I thought he was.
Yeah.
He needs a bit of bulk. You can clearly see it. If you compare it to Duane Vermeulen and even Evan Roos for that matter. He is
or Visa.
Visa. Yeah, Visa who's sort of the incumbent now. He's tall. He's taller than I am. But he's not that big. Physically, imposing. So yeah, good point. Interesting. Sorry, I wanted to talk about that. It's been bugging me for a while. Let's talk about what the Aussies are. What rabbit they're going to have to put out of the hat, out of this weekend. Joe Schmidt saw what he was up against last week. They were surprised by the physicality, like we expected. So they bulked up. They don't want to be humiliated in the scrums again. They brought in a couple of new players in. You mentioned some of them earlier. Tell us what you did last week. Who exactly are these guys? What can we expect of them? And what can we expect of the Aussies, the Wallabies, as a team, in terms of strategy and tactics to be able to outwit maybe and outplay these Boks, because they're going to have to be clever more than anything else. Otherwise, they're just going on to hiding for nothing.
So the Wallabies need a tighter game, a slower game. Just everything has to be reverse. All the old stereotypes, throw them out the window. The fact that it's raining in Perth and will be raining in Perth is good for them. They brought in our old friend, Nick White, Mr. Mustache, and he's going to be a box kicker. And guess who their best chaser is? Marika Korobete.
Ooh.
So the White to Korobete Express is going to see if Rassie can, I know he can sky. He's got good leaps, but can he take the hit? Can he take the bullet train express from Marika? And that's not the end of it. I think what they also said to themselves, and Joe Schmidt's a canny operator. I mean, he went into Brisbane knowing they would lose probably. He wanted to see how they would lose, in what ways they lost, and now he's all about the adaptation. So he will have come to this saying, we're going to have to put up more kicks, not less, better kicks, shorter kicks, contestables, hug them right in the trams, make the Boks take kicks, make Sasha, Rassie, probably Low will hang back, take some kicks, make them, earn their pay, not so much space this time. Someone's going to be tasked with putting their body on Sasha enough times where he feels that he was in a test match and that his white pants going to be a different color. I do think that for the main core is the same, but what we have is 2 new Anguses. So think of Angus beef. Angus Bell is the best prop. He's better than Tupou. He's better because he's a better scrummager. He's a technical scrummager on the loose head. He's a little bit like Tank Toy, actually. Similar size, mobility. Only he's young, but he's got 28 caps. And whenever he had a run at France Malherbe in 2022, I think it was, he did well. He was one of the only props that had a plus penalty count against France Malherbe in 10 years. And it wasn't a fluke. It was something about him bothers the tight head. So, and he's actually rumored to be one of the best golfers on the team. He's got a good eye hand. He's an athlete. He's a ball playing prop. So Angus Bell is a big upgrade on what they had before. They still have a problem at hooker, which they cannot really solve in 1 week. But I would say Angus Blythe, the other Angus, is a kind of a South African style lock, right? He comes from Queensland. He's got a little bit of aggro. He's a bit of a bastard, and he would like that, by the way, so he's not going to be mad at me. 3 caps. He's always put his body on the line. He's only 26 or so he's kind of, he will bring a lot more heat than Nick Frost did. So in 2 positions in the pack, you got an upgrade, and then they've held faith with the Italian, Carlo Tizzano. Tizzano got found out, right, in Brisbane. He was not big enough. He was just not Vus enough. He didn't know what test rugby. So then you got a decision as a coach. And I empathize with both Carlo and Joe. Like, he probably sat down with him and said, hey, son, I want to give you an opportunity to get your name back inside the team. Forget, the box, forget the fans, just in this group. You you kind of got done, Can I trust you on your home pitch in Perth to come back with some sound and fury? And then I'm going to tell you, if you cannot, we're probably going to have to bring someone else in. So that would be motivational for a guy who wants to play and be the best. He's 24 years old. He has one cap. It wasn't a good cap. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be the one cap for your country that didn't work out, the one-hit wonder. So in the pack as a whole, 298 starting pack caps for the Wallabies, 298, so almost 300, 135, and most of that's Pieter-Steph. So you would think that this is... Rassie put some pressure on Joe by saying, I'm picking this pack. Well, now you kind of have to be at least parity. You should win the pack battle. There's an awful lot of pressure on the Wallabies, not just the Bok players who want to step up and be as good as Ben Jason and Pieter-Steph, but there's also pressure on the Wallabies to say, if you get run over by a pack that's less than 50% of your caps, why are you playing Test rugby? But we can go to the backs now, because that's where I think the intrigue really happens at 9 and 10. Let's just say that the packs do what they do, and even though it's a youngish, bullish pack, and it does okay, and it's sort of in there, and you always can bring in the heavy artillery if you want. Look at this. Has it ever happened in Bok history, or at least in the modern era, that you have a 1-cap scrum off and a 5-cap fly off, 6 caps total, in a proper test match, where you have a chance to win the championship, up against 68 caps, Nick White, and 21 caps, Noah? I don't know of a 6 to 89 cap gap that's ever existed. I don't know. I'm trying to think of it, actually. Might have been when Pollard first started. There might have been, I don't know, but he usually had a pretty experienced 9. So if you're thinking about game managers, and you got Tom Wright at 15, Nick White, the White, Wright, and Noah combination should have the wood over Rassie, Mornay, and Sasha. Again, if you cannot do that, if the Wallabies cannot steer the ship better with those 100 and so, 110, 115 caps against 11 caps, it's a worry. Again, this pressure can cut both ways, because Noah Lolosio is facing immense pressure from within Australia. A lot of people put the loss on him. Jake Gordon, bore the brunt as well. So now they bring in a box-kicking Nick White, a guy, when he kicks the ball, it sounds different. He's got a really big thunk on that kick. It'll go up high. It'll be in the air forever, in the rain. And so, this is for the Church of Rassie, as they call it. This is the time to see, have you got your baptism right? This is where you would imagine it could be really, really good. Man of the match. Rassie runs away from everyone because they gave him too much space, or he's going to get, the lick and it keeps on ticking.
Rassie is known for the fact that he jumps and then puts out his leg. Remember, he got a card for that. For the shot.
Gotta watch it.
He's good in the air, but his landing is not so good, I don't think.
It's because he jumps so high. So I think in a way he's a victim of his own success. I think he gets up into positions where his knee and foot is on the same level as someone else's head. Look, he's got some athletic superiorities that I think Lukhanyo Am will be eager to exploit. I can also see Sasha being a good combination. I don't know if that's ever, been on the field together, but that's exciting. The real thing is Australia has to be ahead at 40, because that bench is the greatest bench that's ever been assembled. I mean, try to find a bench in rugby history better than Eben, Ox, Vincent, Malcolm, Andre, with Lubbock on the side as well. Like what is that? I think the Wallabies have to have a hell of a first half. I think they will have a better one. I mean, well, I don't know how you couldn't, but I don't think, if it's even or if it's drawn at 60, it's over. That Bok bench will overwhelm them.
That's just what I was thinking now. Listen, the Rassie's effectively saying, listen, here's my team. I'm going to tie my one hand behind my back. Now, give it your best shot. So the Aussies go hammer and tongs at the box, and they, give them hell for leather, and they maybe, then the lead at halftime, whatever. So lo and behold, this World Cup every single player on that bench has won a World Cup, at least one, some of them two. So it's like David and Goliath. You can do whatever you want to that first half. So we're going to get pummeled in the second half anyway. Do you think they might bring on the bench sooner rather than later? Maybe like they did with Marnie against England in the World Cup, hook them sooner than expected, or are they going to give them an extended run, the run-on team, do you think?
I think if Grobs is having trouble on the line out, you could see Marks sooner than later because they still want to give Marks minutes and they could justify it that way. It wouldn't be a slight on Johan to say we want, one of the best hookers in the world to come on at, 30 minutes in. I've seen that before. We've all seen that before with the Bucks. I think they'll hold back a bit on Ox and Vince to see, because sometimes you just want to see 4 or 5 scrums before. You don't want a knee jerk. And also you have the problem of uncontested scrums or worse if you do it too quickly. There's a holdback there. I think Kwacha is your ultimate holdback, right? So you can just kind of wait on that guy. But you do think that Eben would come on if the lineout's wobbly, or if the scrum is going backward because of the locks. So I think that's there. And then on the 3 back bench, which is unusual for the Bucks nowadays, that's super interesting. Like what are you bringing money on to do? Are we going to see Libok 10, Pollard 12, Sasha 15 at some point, with Rassie to the wing? And there's so many permutations here. I think you would think that they're going to hold one back on the backs, forever almost. And maybe that's money, because the reason why Pollard might come on is what if you're kicking in the rain and you have an off day? It happens to every kicker. Sasha's a great kicker, but every kicker has a bad day. And what if it comes down to that? The average over all the matches that have ever been played between these two teams, and the score right now is 51 for the Bucks, 40 for the Wallabies, and 3 drawn. The average score differential is less than 3 points. It's 2.7. That means a kick usually decides it. So one kick decides it. If it's Kurtley Beale and Quade Cooper and James O'Connor, they win it. And then if it's Pollard, we win it. So I do think that's a possibility. I do kind of want to see Sasha with a kick that matters. I mean, really matters. I want to see it where, it's squeaky bum time and see what that looks like. But, I'm not sure. I think the permutations of the bench are interesting because, just to go back to how lightly capped this team is, remember the starting 15 that was in Bloemfontein in 2022,
Wales,
when all the spectators should have gotten their money back from that test against Wales, when it was the first time Wales ever won in South Africa? The starting 15 there had 392 caps. The starting 15 in this match, 331. So it's actually less experienced than that. The situation does change, however, when you put the bench on. So it's all about the timing of the bench. You're right. I would imagine, just like in the quarterfinal, or was it the semifinal in the World Cup, it was a highly animated bench with Felix and Rassie, and people were yelling and shouting, and Jacques Nienaber was hiding behind his clipboard. Maybe this is one of those situations where you get your first workout in the coach's box. That's also important to work out, Is Tony's voice important? Is Jerry's voice important? What point does Ndan take his scrum cap off and throw it in the pile? So I don't know. You could see this going into a very tight game because of the rain and because Australia was so thoroughly embarrassed. And you should never discount the power of humiliation in sport. These are proud athletes. There's no way that Marika Korobetti has anything other than go full. Nick White, however much we hate him, he is a fantastic competitor, a real competitor. And so he's going to try and work out what we'll do and what will get a lead. So you would think that the Wallabies should have a lead at some point in this match. I don't know when and how, but you would think that somewhere in the first 40, there will be a lead. And then you want to see what happens with Mornay and Sasha. I got to say, the one guy I'm looking at I'm most excited about watching is probably Mornay. I just want to see what that looks like. He's so strong. He's quick. I like his game. I just want to see how it translates to Test rugby.
Talking about at 12. Now, proved to be superhuman against Portugal because he played both 12 and 13 at the same time, because Estra has got off the yellow card. So I mean, he must have proven a point there, and we know he started his career at 12. But what do you think Rassie sees in him as a 12? I typically thought that the position has become too physical. I know he's not a small guy, but he's not as physical as a Allende or a Esterhuizen for that matter. I wonder what the thinking is there.
Maybe Rassie just wants to solve the debate between the Arm crowd and the Creel crowd. He's like, okay, I'll put them both on and we'll see who does better.
Sounds like Rassie, doesn't it?
I would invite you to think about this complexity. I think it's Tony Brown. So the way the 12 and 13 have been playing this year has been quite different from in years prior. And so, like, for example, Damien Delende had the most passes of his career, I think, in one of the matches against Ireland. And Creel had a lot of the breaks. So if you're thinking about a guy who can set you free and has a good delay, can do a bit of a cross field, hold, and then boom, the pop. I think, Arm's really good at that. The second thing is he made his name coming up as a defensive center. And he did play a lot of 12, by the way. So I think it's in his bag. I mean, I think he knows how to do it. You're right, it's been a while. I don't think you're going to see do crash ball, but I don't think Tony Brown wants that. So I think maybe it's going to be more patterns. I'm actually interested if they do Colby at 9 again a few times and put Mornay in the back line, which shifts Arm over one and makes Creel kind of a wing, extra wing, and see what happens there. I was thinking about why they did that and then didn't really use it. And I was thinking it might have been a setup, like show something, and then you think that's not going to happen, then something happens.
Yeah, well, what happened was the Boks just dominated that scrum. There was no time to get the ball to the back line.
Yeah, maybe. Well, maybe we'll never know what was going to happen. But it does look like Ireland's been doing this for a while, where they give you a look, and then they don't do anything with it. And they even do it 7-8 times in a row. And then that 9th time that, they set you up and then they have an easy score. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting. Joe Schmidt, do you think he's ever been in this kind of a situation? I know, he's been through Ireland. Ireland was maybe not the best team in the world. He built them up and everything. But to come back from this almost, I don't want to call it humiliation, but sort of what it was. And you don't really have any cards in your deck to counter this with, and you have to make do with sort of, second or third best players and the likes. Do you think he's got the appetite for this still? Do you think he's up to it? I'm sure he's up to it, but does he have the appetite? I think that's probably the question I'm asking.
So one side of this argues that it's what he's always done. School teacher, club rugby, was a bit in the French system, came over, wasn't, well regarded necessarily. It wasn't like, thought of as top, gets at Leinster, works his way through, takes Ireland, and gets there. That's the one telling of the story. The other telling of the story is that everywhere he landed, it was already a good team. Clermont, Leinster was already stacked, and Ireland was already actually built out, and a lot of that had to do with the rise of the school system, with Lancaster as a big help. Then he goes over to New Zealand. He takes a top 3 team and gets to the top 2 for the World Cup final, and he's one chin away from maybe winning it. So we don't know if it's not for everyone. It's not every coach that can take this, bad news bears, doldrums, just really down in the dumps and do it, because your belief factor is so low among the players. The winning streak they had of 3 or 4 matches was important because of that. But then Brisbane really set them back, because no matter how many times you tell the press and the rest of us, and we believe you, I totally get it, Joe. I understand. It's still hard. It's hard to get beaten. So this is a golden opportunity for him to show that he can build something. I think he has scores to settle. I think he's a bit upset in a way with how the Lions thing, with how the All Blacks thing went. I think Joe Schmidt is an underrated competitor. So if there's anyone that I would say at his age, I don't know, what is he, 58, 59? He still has plenty of energy. He looks like a healthy guy. I think he wants to prove something in the next 2, 3, 4 years. I don't think he's going to be a 10-year coach or 8-year coach or 6-year coach. I think he's looking at that as a rescue job, come out of nowhere, Cinderella story, beat the Lions or run them close, and then, get to a final at home and, give them all they got. I mean, let it rip. So I think he thinks in terms of 3 or 4 years, like Rassie did. Just like I think we all know that Rassie and Jacques exceeded expectations and got there quicker. I think that's what Schmidt's hoping for, but he just needs more cattle. I think he has to go overseas. I think he has to bring in, he's just got to bring big forwards from overseas.
Talking about bringing players from overseas, let's just touch on what Razor's doing with the All Blacks. They're in a similar situation. They only pick local players, and local is lekker to a point, when you start losing games consistently. And do you think they might ever change that system? I mean, if you could pick a Richie Mo'unga rather than a Damien McKenzie, wouldn't you rather do that, for example?
Yeah. So I think that mindset was born of supremacy, which ended sometime around 2018. And since that time, they've sorely lacked. And they just don't have, again, that critical mass you need in a squad. It's not so much about who your best 15 players, it's who the worst 5 are in your 34. Who's the weakest 3 in the 23. And it's been bad. It's like you cannot look at this team and say Ratama or Josh Lord are at the same level as the backbench or what we saw against Ireland. So they're lacking in that, and it's easy fix, right? They have people that you absolutely. Richie Mo'unga comes in and makes this better. I mean, within 2 seconds, like the whole thing looks different. You cannot say that about every player, but you can say that about Mo'unga. I mean, you could just say that absolutely without any hesitation. Similar thing if Aaron Smith was here. So if you just take 9 and 10 and change them to Aaron Smith and Mo'unga, and you have Damien McKenzie and TJ Perenara on the bench, I'm problem solved. It's not so much that you have to bring in, resurrect Retallick and Whitelock. Tupou Vaa'i is not playing bad. Sam Darry is not playing badly. So it's about, game management. The second part of that is at loose trio. I don't know what's going on there, but I really don't understand Razor's stubbornness at continuing on with Dalton Papali'i, who hasn't been good. You're up against an Argentine team where Pablo Matera, Juan Martin Gonzalez, and Marcos Kremer, and this new guy coming in, you'll see him, Joaquin Ovied. They're dynamic. They're quick. They're making the All Black forwards look slow. When did you ever see All Blacks play in New Zealand and look slow in the loose? You didn't. That was one of their calling cards. So I don't know about Razor. Did he win forever and ever at Crusaders because he was a good recruiter, because he had the best teams, because he had the depth? Now that you're at test level and everyone's good, and it becomes more a coaching contest, because if everyone's pretty good and everyone's got gone athletes, then it's a lot more about the system and the plan. Is he going to be one of those guys that sticks and holds and says, no, it's going to be fine, which reminds you a lot about Ian Foster? Or is he going to be more of an innovator like Steve Shag Hansen, who was quick on the draw? Like if something wasn't working, you got dropped. There was no one above Hansen. I mean, not even McCaw. So I do wonder about Razor being a little bit tentative as an early coach, not wanting to ruffle too many feathers, believing in his players too much. No, coach, I got this. I got this. I promise you. At some point you go, no, I mean, I know you want to, but you're not in good enough form. Sam Cane is on the bench, and that's interesting. He's a hard tackler. He's always been a hard tackler. He's got concrete shoulders, so that might be interesting in the second stanza.
Well, he better get his act together, because I mean, all this is like we said, is a bit of a repetition for the real games that start, very soon. The main meal that we talked about in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, you don't want to go into a 4-game losing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what happens in New Zealand when you lose 4 games in a row. I don't know if that's happened before. I don't know what happens. I don't know. There could be some riots in the street or something. Kiwis are notoriously taciturn guys. They're not demonstrative fans. I don't think they're even as emotional as we are. I think they're just very kind of like, this too shall pass. This is not the best thing in the world. Not the worst thing in the world. But I think if you lose this match and then you're staring down the barrel of Ellis Park in Cape Town against kind of a platoon rested Bok team, because by doing what Rassie's doing right now, that means that by the time Cape Town rolls around, you have some rip roaring. You have Archie back. You have you have a tough. You have the kind of team that All Blacks would struggle with right now in Lucy's and Locks. So and you have a more confident Sasha, perhaps. You have a thoroughly rested Pollard. I mean, everyone just rested and ready to go. So I think this actually is a bigger game than you would ever have thought it was. Like 2 years ago, if you said, hey, in 2024 at Eden Park, where it's been 50 matches since they lost, Argentina's coming with no props, no scrum, and a guy named Chocoboris and a guy named Maroni, and what's going to happen? You'd say, they'll put them away easily. I'm not sure that's clear. It should happen, but what I'm saying is the thought of that it might not happen, and what would happen next if it didn't happen would be what keeps Razor up at night.
Just a small remark, but I saw a tweet this morning from the All Blacks, and they posted the team for the 2015, I think, semi-final or something. And if you look at those names compared to what you see now, it was just below the team announcement. Richie McCaw, Kieran Reid,
Sonny Bill Williams,
Williams,
Conrad Smith.
It's light
Ben
years
Smith.
apart. I mean, there's no
we
way.
can say them all. Like
Yeah.
you and I can sit here right now and we can say them without
Yeah.
looking at. I don't have to look at it. I know those
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah. And now you look at the box. We're in the same situation now. These are the all-time great Springbok kind of a thing. So the All Blacks are onto hiding for nothing. They're going to have to like I said before, pull a rabbit out of this hat. And I don't know. I honestly don't know if Scott Robertson is the guy to do it. It's going to be a big come-uppance here in the Republic. We'll see what happens.
They're putting a lot on the bench, not the bench, in the back line. So they brought in Caleb Clark and Will Jordan. And that is interesting. So you would think that this team would win if you said, Harry, put $500 on the result of this match. I would go with the All Blacks. But if you said, tell me exactly how it's going to happen right now, I go, I don't know. It's going to require some broken play. I think, the All Blacks scored enough to win, but they just could not keep Argentina from scoring. So that's interesting too. Maybe it's not about Caleb Clark and Will Jordan and Bowden Barrett. Maybe it's about the loose trios, and whoever wins the loose trio battle is going to win this match. Is what I'm probably going to. That's probably my big hot opinion right now. Is whoever wins the breakdown wins the match.
Sorry, Harry. One last question before you go. Mark de Lea, you've sung his praises quite often, and so as have I. And he's been dropped to the bench. I mean, Argentina sort of found him out, didn't they?
It's a high ball, and so wings do go through dips in form on things, and what they usually go on dips in form is on either tackling or high ball. I mean, they were kids. They were the best, quickest guys, hardest to tackle. But every now and then you see the same thing with Chess and Colby, by the way. Every now and then he's a little bit off on D and maybe, on the high ball. So Mark Telea, not the biggest guy in the world, was getting found out there. Will Jordan is like having an extra fullback. You would think that, they'll find a way to get Will Jordan and Bowden Barrett in some space. So there you go.
All right, thanks. We'll see how it pans out this weekend. And on Monday, in episode 15, we'll discuss it in great depth. Thanks, Harry. It was nice.
Yep. Cheers.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Welman.